Good afternoon. My name is Cliff Lane. I'm Clinical Director for NIAID, and it's my great pleasure today to welcome to the NIH Wednesday Afternoon Lecture Series Dr. CAPRISA Abdul-Karim. The title of her lecture is Tenofovir Gel, New Hope for HIV Prevention in Women. Dr. Karim received a bachelor's degree in microbiology and biochemistry from the University of Durban in 1981. That was followed by an honors degree in biochemistry from the University of Witwatersrand in 1983 and a higher education diploma from the University of South Africa in 1986. In 1988, she obtained a Master's of Science degree in parasitology from Columbia University, and in 2000 received a PhD in medicine from the University of Natal. Her PhD thesis, entitled Women and AIDS, Epidemiologic and Gender Barriers to Prevention, was a preview of her work to come. Following her PhD, she was appointed to the faculties of the Schools of Public Health at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and at Columbia University, which are still in place today. Over the past 24 years, her research has focused on achieving a better understanding of the evolution of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in South Africa, on developing sustainable strategies to introduce combination antiretroviral therapy in resource-constrained settings, on the optimal timing of combination antiretroviral therapy in the setting of active TB, and the topic of her talk today, developing novel approaches to HIV prevention, including the use of topical microbicides. She currently serves as Associate Scientific Director of the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa, is co-chair of the NIH-funded HIV Prevention Trials Network, and plays a major role in the Columbia University Southern African Fogarty AIDS International Training and Research Program. Her work has been recognized with many distinctive awards and honors. Her demonstration of the effectiveness of a tenofovir-containing gel in preventing HIV infection in women was recognized as one of the top 10 scientific achievements of 2010. And last month, she was presented with the Nagali Mann Award for Achievement in Public Health at the Conference on Retroviruses and Opportunistic Infections. Along with Diane Havler and Wafa El-Sadar, she's currently serving as a co-chair for the Scientific Program Committee of the 19th International AIDS Conference, to be held July 22nd to 27th in Washington, D.C., with a theme of turning the tide together. So I encourage anyone who has an abstract that they're waiting to hear about for the AIDS conference here in July, be sure to go to the reception, because after her lecture here, Dr. Karim will be going to what's affectionately referred to as the marathon meeting for that AIDS conference, at which time the abstracts will be selected. Okay. Now, what I've just done, those of you who are part of the NIH community know, is the standard protocol for introducing an NIH speaker at one of our major conferences. What I'd like to do is just take one more minute and actually try to put her accomplishments into the perspective of South African politics. CAPRISA graduated from college in South Africa while apartheid was the policy of an abusive, corrupt, white South African government. She pursued higher education in South Africa during the time of a declared state of emergency and revolt in the South African townships. She received her PhD and began her independent research career studying HIV at the start of the presidency of Thabo Mbeki and the rise of the HIV denialist movement in South Africa and the accompanying health policies of the Mbeki government. Policies that denied life-saving antiretrovirals to the general public and that would eventually be responsible for the avoidable deaths of countless but not faceless individuals. Today, South Africa is home to the largest number of patients with HIV of any country in the world. It has an overall HIV prevalence of 10%, with 3 times that number, or 30%, in pregnant women. The current government, under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, has taken an aggressive approach to the treatment and prevention of HIV/AIDS and has set ambitious yet achievable goals. It's through the work of Dr. Karim and her colleagues and the data that they have generated that South Africa is now on a path to deal much more effectively with the challenge of HIV and AIDS. During my time as clinical director of NIAID, I've had the opportunity to travel to many countries and to work in many unique and challenging situations. Without a doubt, South Africa has been among the most unique and most challenging. Dr. Karim's accomplishments in the face of great adversity are a testament to the courage, determination, and strength of spirit of the South African people. We are indeed fortunate to have as our speaker today someone who embodies this spirit as a hero of the South African struggle. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Carisha Abdul Karim to deliver her talk entitled Tenofovir Gel, New Hope for HIV Prevention in Women. Carisha.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honor and privilege to be able to deliver this lecture this afternoon. And it's traditionally called the Wednesday afternoon lecture, but I'm sure all of you are aware it's Thursday afternoon. But I want to start by thanking Cliff very much for being such a warm and generous host, and also for this incredibly warm and personal introduction. I want to say one more word about Cliff, though, because he referred to the darkest days of a young democracy during the Mbeki era. And I want to pay tribute to Cliff's role during that time. There was a special panel set up by President Mbeki to gather information from dissidents and from people who believed HIV causes AIDS. And Cliff was a real stalwart in that panel, representing clearly the viewpoint that HIV does cause AIDS. And those were terrible days, particularly in a young democracy. And people like Cliff, who played such a pivotal role on that panel, our appreciation cannot be underscored. As I stand here before, I am presenting research that's been undertaken both by myself and SLIM. And I think whatever AIDS research I present, I can't really separate out whose idea was it first, because a lot of what we've done has been done jointly. And while I take responsibility for everything that I say, I just wanted to acknowledge that. But in addition to SLIM, we have a large group of people across South Africa that we work with collaboratively. But as we came out of the dark days of apartheid, the NIH played a critical role in facilitating our entry into the global community and supporting our efforts in what would later become the epicenter of the pandemic. And I particularly want to thank Dr. Jack Weizcarver from the Office of AIDS Research and Dr. Fauci from NIAID. And it is through their support of our work that we're able to establish CAPRISA through the CIPRA Program Award, but also through a number of R01s and network-related research that we have been able to advance our understanding of the epidemic and ultimately our response both to HIV and TB. I'd also like to recognize from the Fogarty International Center, Dr. Roger Glass, Dr. Ken Bridboard, and Dr. Jean McDermott. Their support through the AIDS International Training and Research Program was pivotal in strengthening the science base in South Africa to enable the research that we undertake all the way from basic science to social sciences, including ethics, to be undertaken. And last but not least, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Gray Hanley, Ed Tremont, and Carl Diefenbach. Gray Hanley was health attaché in South Africa during this. I think he literally arrived at the time when Mbeki declared his dissident position. And soon after the PEPFAR grant was established, Gray was pivotal in supporting our efforts to use PEPFAR funds to undertake the SAPA trial, which I'm not going to talk about today, but that was pivotal in terms of answering a critical question, which is when to start antiretroviral treatment in TB, HIV co-infected patients. As you know, the findings from that trial has led to changes in several treatment guidelines across the world. So I'm going to focus today on Tenofovir gel and new hope for HIV prevention in women. It's a quick outline. I'll cover very briefly and quickly women and HIV in Africa, and particularly the urgent need for HIV prevention in women. I'm going to talk about the Tenofovir gel and its effectiveness against HIV and herpes simplex virus 2. and more recently how we have seen a changing landscape in prevention of sexual transmission of HIV that has resulted in a change in the discourse in our response to the epidemic. As Cliff mentioned, the theme for the 2012 AIDS conference is turning the tide together. And that type of discourse was inconceivable even 2 years ago. I want to touch briefly on some preliminary analysis, subgroup analysis that has been undertaken from the CAPRISA 004 trial that may help guide future prevention trials, and end with a few concluding remarks. I think that most of us in the room are familiar with the magnitude of the HIV epidemic, and even at this point in time we have over 33 million people living with HIV. We continue to see over 2.5 million new HIV infections each year and 1.8 million deaths. What's also significant is more than 70% of those infections are in sub-Saharan Africa, with South Africa at the epicenter. Although it has less than 1% of the world's population, it carries 5.4 million HIV infections and is the country with the most AIDS cases. I want to go back to one of the first studies that we undertook in South Africa, a population-based seroprevalence survey that really set the scene for us understanding, one, the evolving epidemic in South Africa, and two, highlight a very key characteristic of the HIV epidemic. So in 1990, we had no data about HIV, and we wondered why would Southern Africa be immune from the epidemic unfolding in Central and Eastern Africa. By now, we had tests to measure antibodies, and we used the opportunity of a population-based malaria surveillance program to piggyback the first HIV population-based study. And what we learned in this particular survey was that HIV prevalence was less than 1% in KwaZulu-Natal in 1990. Secondly, we learned that there was a difference in terms of the amount of infection in women compared to men. More importantly, women acquired infection at a much younger age compared to men. So if you follow this blue line, which is infection in men, and we just focus on 15 to 19-year-olds, what you see is no infection in men. In contrast, if you follow the red line, what you see at 15 to 19, that already when the overall prevalence was less than 1%, in women the prevalence was over 6%. What we see here also is that women continue to acquire infection throughout their life course, and with men we see a peak some 5 to 7 years later. This age-sex difference between when women acquire infection and when men acquire infection is a key driver of the epidemic in Southern Africa, and why we continue to see high rates of new HIV infection. For as long as we have young girls transitioning to adulthood and becoming sexually active and having sex with men in their 20s, there is no end in sight for this epidemic in Southern Africa. Subsequently, we learned in other parts of Africa, and here I've just given you a sample of countries, Kenya, Malawi, Cameroon, and Lesotho. We see the similar pattern of HIV acquisition, very early age of acquisition, 15 to 19 for women, women in that 15 to 19 year age group having 3 to 6-fold higher infections compared to men, that later acquisition in men continuing. So throughout the 90s, while we were at the South African Medical Research Council, we continued to do a series of studies to try and understand this emerging and evolving HIV epidemic. Part of our early work was looking at HIV in relation to other sexually transmitted infections, and established that 75% of women who had an STI was asymptomatic. And given that most of the STIs are treated on a symptom basis, means that large numbers of women who have STIs remain untreated. Our work with urban black mothers and with sex workers highlighted the complexity of what is rapidly evolving as a generalized epidemic. The risk of HIV infection in sex workers, while the prevalence was already quite high, in excess of 70% in the 90s, and the prevalence was lower, the issues affecting vulnerability and susceptibility were very similar. It was very much linked to gender disparities and power imbalances, the exclusion of women from the formal economy, and it really threw into the spotlight what exactly the definition of sex work is. So we do have self-identified sex workers, but even urban mothers would have transactional sex depending on what their need was. And what we also started to see as we recognized beyond the risk factor studies was the need to intervene. And as we established cohorts in preparation for interventions, we were able to describe not only the high prevalence that was growing rapidly, but also the high rates of new HIV infection. In the 2000s, we moved from the Medical Research Council to establish CAPRISA. And within CAPRISA, we continued to monitor the evolving HIV epidemic. What we found was, despite the prevalence of HIV infection being in excess of 30%, much higher in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which is at the epicenter of the pandemic, at least 2 years ahead of the rest of the country, that stigma, whether real or perceived, was a major impediment for testing, knowledge of HIV status, or even seeking access to services. By now, the epidemic has matured, and we started to see the impact of a maturing epidemic in terms of mortality rates and morbidity patterns in young women. And so not only were we seeing high rates of new HIV infection, but we are also seeing young women dying between the ages of 30 and 35 from HIV infection acquired in their 20s. We also started to get a better sense of infections during pregnancy and the importance of studying pathogenesis in women. And while we are 3 decades into the pandemic, this remains an area where there's a paucity of information, and the amount of data on understanding transmission in women remains sparse, and we're largely working in a terrain where we are taking shots in the dark, for want of a better phrase. But also, as we moved into the 2000s and treatment access became possible through solidarity efforts, the establishment of PEPFAR, the Global Fund for AIDS, Malaria, and TB, what we started to learn was the importance of linking our proof of concept, basic science research, and all the work from what we'd been doing to date, and where we were excluded from participation beyond that stage by the Mbeki government, to now needing to link this to policy and practice. I want to just continue on this HIV infection in women and share with you data that's more recent. So currently at CAPRISA we're undertaking a collaborative conditional cash transfer combination prevention intervention in 14 high schools in rural KwaZulu-Natal. So I share with you the baseline data from the survey that was conducted in 2010. This particular study is being conducted with an NGO called MIET Africa and the Department of Education, and the funding comes from the Dutch government. And what you see here, if we look at HIV prevalence in males, is nothing too dramatic. We have a sort of steady and constant about 1% prevalence of HIV infection. However, when we go to women, we see already by age, so these are high school kids in grades 9 and 10. Okay, so they're about what you would call middle school years. So by age 14, 2.2% are already infected with HIV, and you see the steady increase with each age category. By age 16, that's 3.6%, and by age 20, it's 16%. So these are school kids in high school. If we turn to our antenatal surveys in the same rural community that is home to about 500,000 people, every year as the government does an antenatal survey, we also do a survey in the 7 primary healthcare clinics, and we screen all first visit prenatal clients. And here, if you focus firstly with the deaths of older women and older women over 25 being ill and dying, what we've started to see is sexual coupling patterns move to a much younger age. So about 40% of all pregnant women utilizing these 7 primary care clinics are under the age of 18. If we look at HIV in this particular population over 2005 to 2008, by age 16, 1 in 10 is already infected with HIV. By age 18, it's 1 in 5. By age 20, it's 1 in 3. And by age 24, it's 1 in 2. So that is the magnitude of the epidemic that we're talking about and the burden of infection, particularly in young women. And I also wanted to flag this commentary by Zena Stein, who was my supervisor at Columbia University, and really implanted in me the need to look at all research through a gendered perspective. And here she made the call for HIV prevention methods for women. That led to the microbicide field emerging and advancing. But I think even today, if we have to look at what do we have in the prevention toolbox, and in terms of existing and accepted proven HIV prevention strategies, also referred to ABCC, what we have is abstinence, behavior change, condoms, male and female, and we have medical male circumcision. So for young women who don't have a choice around abstinence, who cannot negotiate a faithful monogamous relationship, or cannot negotiate either male or female condom use, and male circumcision, convincing their partner to go and get circumcised, we have to ask ourselves the question, which of these are prevention tools for young women in Africa? And, you know, it's a clear, resounding none. So as we progressed in our research agenda, this is against the backdrop of the national antenatal surveys showing the early start of the epidemic, the exponential growth, the coalition of multiple epidemics, and this point where in 2010, although we have the largest antiretroviral treatment program, we're still seeing stabilized prevalence data. What that means is that new infections are equal to the number of people dying. So clearly we have to make more efforts in terms of increasing coverage and access of our treatment program to realize the benefits of survival from provision of antiretroviral treatment, but also we have to do much more in terms of preventing HIV infection. So work in microbicides has been a long road, and we did our first phase 1 trial of naloxone 9 film among sex workers, stemming from their efforts for over a year to try and negotiate condom use with their clients, and finding that if they did insist on condoms, they would earn 25% of what they would earn if they didn't insist on condoms. And so a demand for microbicides, so methods they could initiate and use, really came from these early studies with sex workers between Johannesburg and Durban. In around 1995, we initiated, with funding from WHO, the Call 1492 trial of naloxone gel. Who would have predicted at that stage that a FDA-registered vaginal contraceptive would result in as much harm as the Call 1492 gel trial demonstrated? We then moved on in the 2000s to different classes of drugs, and we're part of testing the Pro 2000 gel and subsequently the phase 3 trial that tested buffer gel and Pro 2000. And as you know, although we've learned many lessons from the conduct of these and other microbicide trials, what we needed urgently was something that worked. In 2003, based on preliminary safety data, we developed the CAPRISA 004 trial, a phase 2b trial to assess the safety and effectiveness of tenofovir gel. A critical issue was the dosing strategy. And while many people embarking on PrEP trials at that stage and microbicide trials of antiretrovirals were talking about daily dosing, we chose to use the BAT24 or coitally linked dosing strategy, which is an acronym for insertion of the first gel up to 12 hours before sex, the second gel as soon as possible but within 12 hours after sex. And at that stage, we only had safety data for 2 doses of gel in a 24-hour period, and so we stayed with the 2 doses there. So part of this dosing strategy came from the HivNet 012 nevirapine regimen, where the single dose of nevirapine given to the mother at onset of labor and to the infant within 72 hours after birth was demonstrated to reduce HIV infection from infected mother to infant by 50%. When we initiated this trial in 2007, it was met with very mixed reactions from the scientific community. I just wanted to flag that while the Lancet article called this shift to the use of antiretrovirals as a second chance for microbicides, we also had this Nature piece which doomed this trial to failure, again challenging the design that we'd use for the dosing strategy. We continued with the trial, which was funded by the US government, USAID, and by the South African government through the Ministry of Science and Technology. And in July 2010, the findings of the trial was released at the International AIDS Conference in Vienna and simultaneously published in the journal Science. So what did we learn from CAPRISA 004? The first I want to talk about is the impact of tenofovir gel on genital herpes. So we know that genital herpes has a very high prevalence. About 1 in 5 sexually active adults globally have genital herpes, and about 50 to 60% of South African sexually active adults have HSV-2 infection. It is the most common cause of genital ulcer disease, and it's also mostly asymptomatic. To date, there is no cure or effective prevention other than use of condoms. So what we established quite serendipitously in this trial was by using tenofovir gel, which accumulates at 1,000-fold higher levels in the genital tract at the point of exposure to herpes, we were able to demonstrate 51% protection against HSV-2 by tenofovir gel. And this was statistically significant. More recent work by Antoine's group from Belgium has demonstrated the mechanism by which tenofovir prevents HSV-2 infection. So what evidence do we have that tenofovir gel works? In the CAPRISA 004 trial, we demonstrated that tenofovir gel reduced HIV by 39% when used around a coitally linked dosing strategy. We also demonstrated, as I've just shown you the data, that tenofovir gel reduced genital herpes by 51%. I will show you in a short while a very clear dose response where the higher the adherence, the lower the HIV incidence rate, and where we were able to demonstrate up to 54% reduction in HIV infection. Also published in Lancet was our data on tissue drug level correlates with HIV protection, and higher the genital drug levels, higher the HIV protection. And this confirms and is consistent with substantial animal study data, including that from non-human primates and mice and monkey studies, cell culture and explant, about the efficacy of tenofovir in aborting HIV infection or SIV infection. So shortly after we released this data, we heard about the data from Bob Grant and his colleagues in the IPREC study, where they provided daily dosing of Truvada to men who have sex with men, and we're able to demonstrate 44% protection in terms of preventing HIV infection. In May 2011, we heard from Mike Cohen's group about how early initiation of antiretroviral treatment in discordant couples could protect the uninfected partner from acquiring infection with 96% efficacy. During the IAS meeting in Rome, we learned about Jared Baton and his team study, the Partners PrEP study that demonstrated over 60% protection from daily use of oral tenofovir and over 70% protection from daily use of oral Truvada. And at the same time, we heard from Lynn Paxton and her team, the CDC TDF2 trial that demonstrated over 60% reduction in HIV infection with daily dosing of Truvada. So we moved, this is where the discourse started to change up to this point. So we have more than 90% of all HIV infection is sexually transmitted. And if we look at what is the RCT level evidence we have, up to July 2010, we had the 3 medical male circumcision trials. We had 1 STD treatment trial, the Mwanza trial, that demonstrated 42% efficacy. 9 other STD trials failed to replicate these findings. And then we had the Thai RP144 results, and depending on how that was analyzed, we could have some protection or not. By July 2011, this picture had changed dramatically. So we now had the Cohen study, also similar data from Deborah Donnell showing treatment for prevention, demonstrating. So the effect size is the effect size reported from the trial. It's important to recognize that the duration of these studies varied. So if we have to standardize these for duration of follow-up, we may find slightly different levels of effect size than what is presented here. We had the Partners PrEP study, we had PrEP for heterosexuals from Botswana, the medical male circumcision, PrEP for MSMs, STD treatment, the CAPRISA 04 tenofovir gel trial, and the vaccine trial. So suddenly the prevention landscape changed from what we had in widely accepted prevention toolbox of the ABCC, and I've excluded the PMTCT agenda, transmission through mother to child. I have excluded the blood transfusions, all the harm reduction. So this slide really focuses on sexual transmission and how this landscape has changed from our ABCCs to microbicides for women, oral PrEP. I've put this in a slightly lighter shade because the level of evidence is not as compelling as some of the other data, and largely around the use of antiretrovirals prophylactically for reducing infection, and then the treatment for prevention data. So suddenly we have a whole lot more options in terms of preventing HIV infection, but a lot of the new options are around the use of antiretrovirals, either for treatment or prophylactic use. And so I wanted to quote from the UN General Assembly, where at the declaration on HIV/AIDS and the political commitment on altering responses, this statement, the HIV response faces a moment of truth. This year, we have a unique opportunity to take stock of progress and to critically and honestly assess the barriers that keep us shackled to a reality in which the epidemic continues to outpace the response. So we change suddenly from being in the back foot to actually being able to proactively respond to the epidemic. Some of this change in discourse is captured in this UN AIDS 3 Zeros approach, which is a commitment to 0 new HIV infections, 0 discrimination, and 0 AIDS-related deaths. And I think towards the end of last year, we saw many leaders talking about this changed discourse. Hillary Clinton, in her talk here, I quote, "Our efforts have helped set the stage for a historic opportunity, one that the world has today, to change the course of this pandemic and usher in an AIDS-free generation." You see President Obama in his World AIDS Day talk on December 1st in Washington says, "Few could have imagined that we'd be talking about the real possibility of an AIDS-free generation, but that's what we are talking about." And then Ambassador Gooseby later in December, "There are formidable challenges to be sure, but the progress we've made in translating science to impact in order to achieve our collective vision of an AIDS-free generation is heartening." So this sort of discourse around zero infections and AIDS-free generation starts to become quite pervasive, and just flagging an AVAC report also talking about the end and the end in sight. And I think, as I mentioned and Cliff mentioned, the theme for the upcoming conference. So I wanted to shift a little bit from that changed discourse to looking at some of the key lessons we've learned from further analysis and publications from the tenofovir gel study, and how this discourse has changed through ARVs prophylactic use and ARVs for treatment, but also potential impact that tenofovir gel can have on the epidemic in South Africa and the transformation that we see. But before I go there, I just wanted to flag two other studies that have gone counter to what we've observed generally in terms of prophylactic use of ARVs. And the first is the FemPrep trial. And we heard in CROI a couple of weeks ago that adherence was very low and drug levels were very low, and could partly explain why the FemPrep trial was stopped for futility. And we wait very eagerly to get the data from the VOICE trial to try and understand why both the oral tenofovir arm and the gel arm of the VOICE trials were stopped for futility. Now, as we move forward in terms of the use of ARVs, I wanted to focus on a couple issues, what I would like to call as lessons that we've learned from the CAPRISA 004 study. So I want to highlight at the outset that this is subgroup analysis, that the numbers are small and very preliminary, but I think they give us some useful signals that need to be pursued in a much more structured and systematic manner. So I mentioned earlier the issue of adherence. And the CAPRISA 004 trial dosing strategy was developed after extensive consultation with international scientific experts and review of the monkey challenge data. Just as importantly, it followed detailed consultation with the communities involved. And you can see here that if you look at those people, if we look at those who are low adherers, a clear dose response between low adherers, intermediate adherers, and high adherers. So the second lesson was around drug levels. So it's not simply about adherence, but also that in order to abort infection, we need to have a certain amount of drug on board. And so we don't have at this point in time a proxy marker or any marker to say how much of drug do we need to abort infection. So from our analysis, and I just did the Kaplan-Meier here to project this, that if the tenofovir level was less than 1,000 nanograms per ml, what we were doing was not too different from placebo gel. And I think that's pretty clear here. However, if the tenofovir gel was more than 1,000 nanograms per ml, we are getting some dramatic effects here that were statistically significant. And so we think that it's not simply about the dosing strategy, it's not simply about adherence to drug, but that the amount of drug at the time of exposure is as important as adherence to the dosing strategy. And so for want of anything better, we've made a cutoff about we should be aiming in doing PrEP trials to be reaching about 1,000 nanograms per ml. So if, for example, you had a daily dosing strategy and you used the product in the morning but only had sex much later on, there would be this wide interval where there'd be decay of the drug. And so at the time of exposure, the amount of drug you would have would be insufficient. The third lesson, and I think this is one of the more important lessons we've learned, is that genital tract inflammation is associated with increased HIV infection. So I just wanted to review some of the work we learned around genital inflammation and CIV infection. And very early on, Ashley Haas's group in macaques showed that genital tract inflammation is necessary for the initiation of a productive sieve infection in the female genital mucosa. We know dendritic and other cells produce inflammatory cytokines in response to sieve infection, and inflammatory cytokines recruit activated CD4 T cell targets for infection to be established. So some of the mechanisms we know for animal studies, how true is that for humans, we don't know. But what we do know in terms of a case control study that we undertook in CAPRISA 004 was that if we used cytokine, and particularly the following cytokines, IL-1 alpha, IL-1 beta, tenofovir alpha, IL-8, MIP-1 alpha, or MIP-1 beta, any three of these in any combination, if they were elevated, and we categorize that as general inflammation, and we saw in the absence of tenofovir, if you had cytokine evidence of general inflammation, the odds of being HIV infected was 4-fold. If we look at tenofovir, in the presence of tenofovir, you see an odds of 88. And basically, this is telling you that independent of tenofovir, cytokine elevated levels as an indicator of general inflammation is associated with HIV infection independent, and that in the presence of tenofovir, if you have inflammation, it blunts the impact of tenofovir. And in fact, if you're tenofovir, if you have no cytokines at all, you're going to have almost 100% protection just with tenofovir. So the inflammation is important. We also know that genital tract inflammation is associated with increased susceptibility to infection using a principal component analysis, and we clustered women according to their cytokine concentration profiles, and you can see this very clearly in this particular heat map. And then this is just a visual of the 12 cytokines we measured, and you can see the 6 that I mentioned, how they are impacted. But importantly, in this particular diagram, what I'm flagging is that the inflammation was not due to tenofovir gel. So, so we know that this inflammation that we're seeing is not related to tenofovir gel. This inflammation is independent of exposure and preceded exposure to tenofovir gel. And I think it's important to know that tenofovir gel itself does not cause any inflammation. The last point I want to make is that we know that higher HIV-1 GAG-specific and NEF-specific CD4 cell responses are really important at the time of infection. And what this particular study shows that during breakthrough infection, during tenofovir gel being present, we see a preservation of CD4 T cell responses. And I think, again, that's important in terms of disease progression and knowing that it's not being exacerbated by tenofovir gel. Okay, so I started off showing you this data on HIV infection in South Africa in 1990. And I also want to show you more recent population-based data conducted by the Human Sciences Research Council in 2005. And I think what you see here is a similar pattern in terms of age-sex distribution. But what's really important is to focus on the axes. And what you see is a substantial increase in the prevalence of HIV infection. And we simply cannot allow this to continue for another 15 years. And if we are to achieve this goal of an AIDS-free generation that everyone is talking about, we've got to do more than what we're currently doing. So in terms of tenofovir gel, some of the next steps is that WHO, together with UNAIDS and key stakeholders, have started to work on guidelines for tenofovir gel implementation. And while we've been disappointed with the daily dosing results from the VOICE trial, the FACTS 001 study, which is a confirmatory study using the same dosing strategy as the CAPRISA 004 trial, is currently underway, and we anticipate by 2013 to have results from that trial. And the final clinical study report, if this is successful, should be tabled within a year from that. The WHO guideline development continues and will be finalized at that point, and that work has already been initiated on an implementation strategy. And I think that's an important precedent, because we've always waited so far to get a result and then started the planning in terms of scale up and policy and programmatic delivery. And in the case of tenofovir gel, I think people have appreciated the importance for methods for women. And we anticipate that by 2015, 2016, we should have regulatory approval should the FACTS-001 study confirm these results, and we should be in a position to launch this product by about late 2016. So in conclusion, we have new hope in HIV prevention. We've had more positive trials in the 18 months to date than in the previous 29 years. Treatment for prevention especially provides huge hope, and a lot of discourse out there on treatment as prevention and test and treat. Then in relation to microbicides and oral PrEP, there's promising new HIV prevention technologies for women. And this is important because the gender dynamic is key to controlling HIV in Africa. Tenofovir gel empowers women to directly control their HIV risk. There's an urgent need to confirm gel efficacy. The CAPRISA 004 trial is only the first step in a long road to licensure, and the FACTS-001 trial will be an important confirmatory trial. Some very preliminary modeling work done by Brian Williams and his groups estimates that even at 39% efficacy, tenofovir gel could prevent 1.3 million new HIV infections and over 800,000 deaths in women over the next 20 years in South Africa alone. I want to conclude by acknowledging a number of people that have enabled us to undertake the work that I presented today. First, CAPRISA was established as part of the Comprehensive International Program of Research on AIDS, CIPRA of the National Institutes of Health, through grant number A151794. I have the logos of the different institutions that we work with and support and collaborate with us. CAPRISA is funded by DAIDS, NIAID, through the National Institutes of Health, the Fogarty International Center, USAID via FHI and Conrad, PEPFAR, and the average age of the woman in the CAPRISA 004 trial was 23, and we identified in the screening process more women who were positive than negative, and so our ability to refer those positive women into care was possible through funding from the Department of Health and PEPFAR. The CDC, the South African Department of Science and Technology, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, Gilead Sciences that donated the drug and ceded a royalty-free license to the South African government for manufacture in sub-Saharan Africa. The work by MEAT, DOE, and ourselves funded through the Dutch Embassy, MAC-AIDS through the Tides Foundation, and the Technical Innovation Agency. I thank you very much for your attention.